It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers with you, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. And oh my, do we have a week coming up. Now, this isn't going to quite be like last week, but we are building towards a full moon. And I'm afraid that the energy ahead of that full moon is gonna pack a wallop. People are gonna be in the fields and people are not gonna be quiet about it. So if you're looking for some peace and quiet, the end of this week is probably not gonna be it. We're also probably going to see some more historic events. So I talk about that at the end of the show. Okay, I'm not doing Q&A this week on this podcast because I am putting out patron-only Q&A this week. I had some technical issues. Have you noticed that tech is a little bit like wonk wonk? There's been weird stuff. Just me? Just me? I don't think it's just me. I had the dumbest thing happen, though. Like, I was fighting trying to get the rest of the patron-only content edited, and for the life of me, I could not get sound to play back on Audacity. Don't give me advice on Audacity, okay? Just before you start. I have been using that program since 2008, okay? I have beta tested the internet, right? I'm old, but techie. And so I've been so frustrated, and it was something dumb. I had accidentally hit the playback little toggle, but it's practically see-through on there. It's not like it's a different color or anything. I uninstalled, I reinstalled, I updated, just went and looked at I did everything ass backwards. All the technical stuff went in. All I had to do was look at that. And it's funny, I'm not the only person, because I went to the support forum and it was like, you may have inadvertently touched your playback button. I was like, oh, let me go check. Yeah. So that's some of the energy we're working with in these crazy times. So before you start doing anything complicated, like let's apply Occam's razor or the KISS principle. Have you ever heard that? Keep it simple, silly. I don't like to call people stupid because that's the original phrase. Keep it simple, stupid. I don't like that. I think it's mean. So, and we have children listening, so keep it simple, silly. You know, the simplest answer is probably what's up on deck right now. So, I'm also at the end of the show, I'm talking about Julian Assange a little bit. He's got his hearing coming up. He's making an appeal. I'll do a little more in depth about that for patrons, but I gave some of my initial thoughts here. So you find out. Coming up next, I'll be talking about using the astrology to our advantage. I think it's really, really important. I've got a class coming up called Healing the Money Wound Using Astrology. And of course, I started with money because that's what people are interested in, but it has so much more to do with life than money. It's about self-worth. It's about understanding our value. It's about undoing generational trauma based on, out of balance economic and social conditions. Whether you have a background, a European background, everybody wants to think they're royalty. Most of you are not. And if you are, probably not legitimate, which would have mattered a whole hell of a lot back in the day. So most of us came from peasant stock. And if we didn't, we minor landed gentry, at least in the United States, but even throughout the world. Everybody wants to think they were important. And we are important as individuals, but in a social cultural perspective, that trauma can come from war and famine, socioeconomic imbalances. And if we don't address that also goes down to our self-esteem. Like, what do you think you're worth? Right. So I talk about that in the next segment. But before I do, because I forgot to mention it anywhere else in the podcast, and I've started being smart and doing my introduction last, after I've talked about everything. Haha. See, old girls can learn new tricks. I am a special guest on another podcast this week. I'm super excited. I am the Real Medium Matilda's special guest on Beyond the Broomstick. So you guys can tune in to Beyond the Broomstick to hear Matilda and I chat about the difference between how she does her predictions and how I do mine, what we have in common. And we also kind of dig into things about Nostradamus. Now, I happen to know, because she and I talk all the time now, that my interview is split up into two, and half of my interview is going to be on the public podcast and half is going to be in the patron only podcast on her Patreon, which is exciting. So tune into that. We have so much fun together. I think you guys will really enjoy, because we are birds of a feather, and I'm just so glad you guys introduced us. Because if you're just listening, I'm on TikTok, and so is Matilda, and our audiences introduced us. So that was super fun, and we've become friends, and it's very nice to have a friend. When you get to my age, there's handfuls of them left. So super nice. It's always nice to make new friends. So this podcast is much less technologically challenged than last week's. And this week, we're looking at culminations. We're looking at situations culminating. And I talk about that. I talk a little bit about what's going on in the world. In this, again, at the end of the podcast, I take a look at a couple of issues. It's going to be a little crunchy. So just deep breaths, hold hands, get in the Discord. You can always use the venting chamber. Remember, we don't want everybody dumping everywhere, all over. We're trying to keep it at least pragmatic, right? A reasonably even kill. But if you have a shitty day, you should be able to scream into a void. So we have the venting chamber in the Discord. You can always do that. But yeah, so I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. And coming up next, I'm going to talk a little bit about that live stream the other night. It was great. It was great. But man, YouTube is feral. So that and more on episode 7 of season 4 of the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. So let's get to work together, all right? Let's fold that laundry. Let's get through the day. All right, I did a thing. I went live on YouTube and TikTok at the same time. And I've done that before, but I haven't done it publicly on YouTube before. Error. But the point of it is I was doing a demonstration. I read 5 natal charts by the grace of patrons. I had 5 people who snapped up those slots really fast for a mini reading that I did live on TikTok, so I can show people how I read and what it's like to get a natal reading from me personally. And to show what a real astrology reading should look like. Okay, because we see demonstrations online a lot, and it isn't a whole lot better than grabbing a cookbook, and opening up pages. So I wanted to show what a real astrology reading looks like, and I did 5 people's charts. We were on live for about 3 hours. It was a good time. So anyway, everybody got a lot out of it, including me. But oh my God, YouTube is feral. And granted, I didn't know about the moderating tools. I've been edumacated since. Thank you to Susie Evolutionary. She's going to help me set up and figure out where that stuff is. Oh my God. If you're on YouTube and you troll people, good God. It was obscene. I thought the trolls on TikTok were bad. They're just opinionated. This was crazy. But anyway, a good time was had by all. At least we laughed through it. And what was really fun is I put the initials for each one of the people who took the reading because I didn't want, to blow their privacy. And their initials, if you were creative with your spelling, spelled magic. MACJK. How fun was that? And it was neat. So that was a really fun exercise. I think I'll do some more of that. I don't think I'm going to do that long of a demonstration again. That was a lot. It left me very, very tired, and I ended up being very tired for class and running late to teach today. So we won't do that again that way. Blame my Saggy Mars. But you can check out the replay on Patreon, and it's already posted because I knew the people who had the readings would want to see them. So those are up. I'll be slicing and dicing. That's a Malcolm. I'll be slicing and dicing some of it up for social media. But yeah, it was good, and we got a good set going as well, especially for the tiki-taki. I'll figure out how to read comments if my helper, which that was so funny because I was like, my helper, and my daughter was like, that came off wrong. And I was like, no, you're like Santa's helper. And she's like, that's not how other people do it. I'm like, oh. So it was my daughter. So there we go. We have that. Oh my goodness, temperature change. Alrighty. So, what I want to talk to you guys today about is we've got all of this energy in Aquarius, and the sun has moved into Pisces. And that's great for what I'm going to be talking about is with the sun in Pisces, and we have Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Pluto in Aquarius. It is time to do some hardcore innovation. So using astrology is a great thing to do. It's not like you're waiting for your fate or your destiny, but you can see there's this energy up on deck, and I can surf this cosmic tide. I can use this energy to do something. Now, imagine you look at the weather. Okay, you go outside, it's a sunny day, but if it's 100 degrees, working out in your garden is probably not going to be the best idea, right? Whereas if you're it might be a better day to sit in the shade, work on a writing project, do something that is less invigorating because it's 100 degrees. So being outside and working hard is probably not a good idea. Likewise, if you've got a snowstorm coming, being outside at all is probably an unwise thing. You want to be inside. If you do have to go out, you have to take preparations. Okay. We know this, right? If you've got a light, drizzly, warm summer day and there isn't any thunder or lightning, it is okay to go work out in the garden and put on a hat, right? So we adjust our activities when we look at the physical weather. When we look at the astrological weather, okay, what the planetary movements are doing and the energy available, working against that is as futile as working against the temperatures outside. Again, if it's minus 25, running around without a shirt on and in your stocking feet is going to lead to frostbite, right? So we have all this energy in Aquarius right now, and Aquarius is all about innovating and getting inspired, community, organizing, not organizing from a Virgo perspective, although Aquarius and Virgo's energy tends to, not always the people, because you've got a whole chart. I don't want to hear I don't get along with this. Yeah. You have a whole chart, okay? There may be reasons, but in general, Virgo and Aquarius energy tends to get along pretty well because they do both deal with organization in different ways. So you want to look at your own chart and you want to look at where Aquarius is, and it might be in more than one house. It might take up a whole house. It might be sandwiched in between two signs. Don't worry about interceptions. Okay. Don't worry about that. They get unlocked by transit. So even if you have Aquarius intercepted, the current planetary movements are opening that up to be explored. Okay. It isn't swallowing it into the void. All right. So this is a really good time to look at that part of your life, which would be the house. The house is going to describe that part of the life. And if you're a patron, make sure you're using the astro guides. Okay. Make sure you're using the astro guides, because especially volume 1, issue 1, the ebook, the big ebook, that's the one that's going to give you the most information. So go look at that. So anyway, you want to look at that area of life and be like, okay, what can get switched up? What can be changed? What can be innovated? What can be made more effective, more efficient? All right. I'm not going to run down through the houses right now, but you can go start looking that up. So speaking of innovation, I did a thing. I wrote a book. It's called Healing the Money Wound Using Astrology. TM. I like to say that TM. Because I realized, one, I'm one person. Okay. So I have limited time on this planet, let alone in my day. And not everybody can get a reading with me that wants a reading with me for lots of reasons. Whether it's out of, somebody's budget, or my times don't work for people, or what have you. And I've made the mistake of overextending my time and energy. And let me tell you, the Pluto has smacked me down for that. So last fall I taught this class, and I was just making a little workbook to go with it. It was going to be like a 20-page little PDF. And I got, speaking of Aquarius energy, or even Uranus, because Uranus rules Aquarius, I got this flash of insight, and I finally came up with something that kind of goes beyond cookbook astrology, meaning, those books where you get the definitions of this is what the sun is, and, little paragraphs. There's a little bit of that in there. But I walk people through rehabilitating their Venus, okay, and understanding their second house and what works for them and their value systems, give advice about how to consider opportunities and jobs, because that's one of the ways we bring resources into ourselves in this world today, in the modern world. And it's a little more prescriptive, and it gives exercises. So, I don't just ask 1 or 2 questions. There's a range of questions, and you can tweak it to yourself. So I'll be teaching this class again, Saturday, the 24th of February, and there's spots open. Patrons get a very special discount on that. And, this book is just really good. It's the first readable draft. It's not the working draft. It's a readable draft. We have a little bit of editing to do, but the material is comprehensive. Okay. So there's stuff we're editing right now and, working on. So, and maybe, I've got a couple of pages I need to tweak. But other than that, I've got some great feedback on it. And in fact, the class that took, the people who took the class that took, I'm so tired. The people who took the class in October just got this book a couple weeks ago, and I got immediate feedback. People used it within days and saw results. And that's my goal. All right. If we're going to write astrology books today, we need to, with the amount of people who have a very basic general knowledge of astrology. People have gone beyond the sun sign. They understand they have a whole birth chart. We've made progress in that department. We need usable information so people can have access to things that help them grow. We can use astrology to surf the cosmic tide, to heal and grow and become more aligned in who we came here to be as human beings, and everybody has social and cultural conditioning that sometimes gets in the way of that. All right. Everybody's been through something. Everybody's faced an obstacle. Everybody's had trauma and drama in some way. And I'm not diminishing. I'm just saying we are not unique in that. I think there's a term that comes from one of the 12-step programs. A friend of mine introduced me to this concept many years ago, and it's called terminal uniqueness. I'm the only person who's ever gone through something, and it's usually cloaked in shame, and it's because people don't talk about their experiences, and then we swung way to the other side where people identify with the pain story, the trauma story. I did it too. And I have very few regrets in this life. And one of those is I lost a fair chunk of time. I lost a couple of years because I got stuck in that pain story. When I could have been putting my energy into so many other things. I was constantly in the need to process. Well, you don't really process anything. That's the lie. Process what? You become aware of it. You go, aha. And you're like, all right, well, now what do I do about it? But you can sit and tell that story till the cows come home and nothing will change. Okay. There is a liberation in finding somebody you can trust to talk to, But I found the most useful thing in years of healing work was identifying the issue, feeling the feelings, letting it come up, dealing with the feelings, admitting it, not shying away from the pain, but then looking at, okay, well, what's next? What do I do with this? Do I want to stay here where I'm in agony, fear, paralysis? What do I really want? And it took me a minute to figure it out. Don't think I did this overnight. So I'm trying to give you guys real tools and facilitate a gentle process that helps you. To me, the process is really figuring out, what do you do next? How do you, if you are where you don't want to be, how do you get to where you want to be? So there's exercises in a series of processes. We start that class out looking at what the money wound is and how it's caused and who has it and how it can manifest. And then we look at the astrology chart to see, like, okay, well, what are we going to do about this? What do we really need? Especially looking at Venus, because Venus represents what we need, how we get our needs met. And I'm very excited about this, especially with the feedback I've gotten. So I'm gonna push this class, guys. If you haven't signed up, get signed up. We're doing the next round is February 24th. And I'm going to put everybody in. Now, if you've taken it before, you've got your coupon in that email to get back in and take it again. Okay. And I'm going to give everybody access to a special group on Wix too. I'll get that information out soon so that we can have discussions in that group. It's a great process. And if you can't take it for whatever reason, maybe you don't have time. By the way, everybody gets the recording. But if you don't have time or you can't afford it right now, even with the patron discount, don't worry. I'm going to have a solution for you. I'm going to make it to be an online program that you can, it'll be more easily on the purse, so now, but you won't get me live, but we'll host events around it. It's not going to be the only process I write using astrology, TM. But it's one I think that really matters in an ever-changing world and changing economy, because we've got such fixed ideas about what makes us valuable and how we can earn money and what's okay and what isn't okay and what makes you good and what makes you bad. And people need some healing around that, because we all have bills to pay and we all have mouths to feed and we all have the need to have food, water, and shelter. That's our basics. And should we have to be paying a premium for those in this life? Oh, hell no. But the reality is that's where we're at. So I wanted to give people some tools to better navigate the world. And I'm excited to do that. Again, it's innovative. Speaking of all these planets in Aquarius, it's innovative. And I am really excited to have done that. All right, I think it's time for some patron shout-outs before I talk about the astrology of the week, because speaking of the 24th, we've got a full moon coming up, and you guys need to know about that. So we'll be talking about the full moon and whatever else is. We got a lot of other stuff coming up this week, so we're going to talk about that too. But first, patron shout-outs, because without patrons, we don't have a podcast. All right, you heard the music. It's time for patron shoutouts. But before we get into the shoutouts, if you're a patron and you haven't checked out the Sunday link up thread in the Discord, you're missing out. We have some very talented, courageous members in our Discord who are trying to make their difference in the world through service and through their small businesses. And these are people who have principles, morals, and want to make change, not just make a buck. Whether they're podcasting, whether they're readers, magical folk. In fact, they're all magical. Whether they're making art or music or chocolate or coaching, helping people understand things and move through the difficulties of life. We have amazingly talented people, and all patrons, regardless of their level, can drop their links in the Sunday link up thread. There's so much good stuff. Go scroll through it. I don't delete anything that goes in there. So you can scroll through and see all the different people who've put their stuff out there, from mediums to, again, creators of all kinds. We even have a chocolatier. She happens to be my bestie, so, that's not a bad thing. Just saying. I'm lucky in my friends. But I'm going to say we do allow people to put their links to help promote their small businesses and enterprises. And most of us, including myself, we're not considered even a small business when we look at how the government views us. We're actually considered micro businesses. So it's important to support one another in our endeavors. If go follow their podcasts, take a listen. So many people are getting started. So help each other out. Okay. That's part of what community does. We investigate, we learn, we listen. We don't just go, well, I don't like that subject. Do you know? Have you listened? So go listen to one another, go support one another. And then if you really like somebody's vibe, then absolutely dive in and support them with more verve. All right. Super proud of everybody. And now it's time to give some big shout out to patrons. Don't forget, patrons, you got your very special discounts that came out last week. I'll put it out this week as well. Oh boy, did I have technical problems. I finally figured it out. You'll get your patron Q&A coming out. I had tech issues last week. All right. So we have big shout outs to our newest patrons. We've got Lizzie, Cindy, Christian, Sarah P, Brittany, Shelby, Shan, Lauren, E, Haley, PK, Becca, Katie, Cindy, MK, Ominous Roses, Jordan, GB, Rebecca, Michaela, Holly, Amber, Amanda, Heather, Brianna, Mary, Natasha, Carter, Stephanie, Lauren, Vanessa, Lisa, Jennifer, Christy, Christina, Manny, Sarah P, Cynthia, Tawny, Rebecca, Elizabeth, Danielle, Nina, Ann, Tierney, Nicole, Anna Banana, Yoko, Lisa, Wendy K, Karen. Saturn's in the house. Saturn, thank you. Emily, Ann, Ms. Kelly Queen, Alyssa, Benga, Jude, Emily, Alma, Anais, Geraldine, Madam Fancy Pants, Megumi, Sam, Jacqueline, Stacy, D, Nicholas, and Seth. Thank you for being patrons, and to all of the older patrons, as you know, without you, there is no me. I'm eternally grateful to you guys. Working on the March magazine. That's going to be great. If you don't know what the Awake Space Astrology magazine is, it comes out every month. I'm super excited about that. We just started it in December. You get a couple articles. I do some learning material in there. So like astrology vocabulary words. I do, like astrology school articles where I explain things. Last month, I explained in an article about what degrees are for in astrology in a easy enough to understand article. It's a little complex, but I was like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can communicate it. Plus you get your horoscopes and the mundane events of the week, or of the month. And I talk about that here on the podcast post facto. But you get all of that as a reference. It's over 100 pages long and it's just going to keep getting better. So I'm super excited about that. The astrologers join me. Casey and Mackenzie are off. Mackenzie makes it beautiful, by the way. And then astrologer Mackenzie and astrologer Casey write some of the horoscopes with me. We kind of divvy it up. It depends on who has time. I might write more. Sometimes the people are tired or just can't do it or too busy, but in general, they will write them too. And it's super excited. It's super exciting. I love that. So you get to see their depth and breadth as well. All right. Don't forget to use your discounts. They're pretty juicy this month. All right. On to the next thing. Let's talk about this week because it's a little bit wild, my friends, but it's not as crazy as it could be. And we'll talk about that too. All right. We've got an interesting week ahead with the astrology because we're heading towards that Virgo full moon on February 24th. And everybody and their mother's going to say they feel that full moon before it shows up. They'll be like, I feel it, I feel it, I feel it already. And no, what you'll be feeling is the waxing gibbous moon. That's the phase. It's the phase that happens before the full moon. And you feel it extra because the moon will be in Leo. And it's a lot. It's going to be a lot. So, let me just grab what we're gonna see. It's interesting. So we have the sun already in Pisces. It just moved in a few hours before I started recording this. And just moved into Pisces. So happy Pisces season, everyone. The moon is in Cancer as I record this, and it'll be in Cancer through the 21st at 5:41 a.m. Pacific. That's 8:41 Eastern. On the 21st, we will have the moon enter Leo. Now, interestingly, on the 20th, we will have Venus and Mars conjunct in Aquarius. That could be some really innovative energy. I talked about that at the top of the show. This is the time to do things differently and innovate and work off of inspiration on an individual level. I'm really looking forward to that energy personally. And we've got Mercury moving into Pisces on the 22nd at 11:29 p.m. Pacific. So it might as well be the 23rd for all the rest of yous out there in the world. You future people, you. And then, of course, we have that full moon on the 24th of February at 4:30 a.m. Pacific. So that's 7:30 a.m. Eastern, just in time for the East Coast morning commute. So I'll talk about that. It's going to be wild. I think some things we can expect to see in the headlines, especially with the moon in Cancer this Monday morning, making a trine with Saturn. In Pisces, I think we could see some excessive rainfall. Now, obviously, here in California, we're getting hit by another atmospheric river. I think we can expect some flooding with that. I do. I think especially in areas that don't have the best infrastructure for that kind of water. We'll see some definite erosion events, big tidal issues. We're gonna see a lot of things. It's not my favorite. We'll see a lot of issues with people's roofs and gutters, and it's just a lot. And we haven't really prepared for climate change very well because so many people have been denying it and people haven't been making the necessary changes in various countries. Okay. And so it's not just in the United States that I think we're going to see some big precipitation. I think we could see flooding from a variety of reasons, including infrastructure failures like dams, just canals not done properly, things like that. So we're going to see a lot of precip. I think we're going to see some issues with nationalism, collusions with foreign countries. In fact, fascinating. Now I think the moon will already be in Leo for Julian Assange's trial. He's putting forth an appeal in the UK fighting extradition to the United States. And so that's going to be very interesting. And I'm going to try to move through these headlines so I can talk a little bit about Julian Assange and what I think is up for him, because I do have a birth time for him and I was looking at it earlier. We could see issues with leadership being deposed or attacks on leaders in different countries. A leader could fall ill and we could hear about that. There could be attempted coups or successful coups. This is, again, global, and I have a global audience. So it doesn't mean it's going to happen where you live, though. So this is just what I think is going to be in the headlines. We'll see water quality issues. And again, if we're looking at like climate change and we're looking at floods, then yeah, we're going to have water quality issues. So you could see boil water notices and things like that. National Guard or the equivalent in some other country could be put into action, could be like Army Corps of Engineers as well, but you could see more deployments happen overseas. Politicians are going to be investigated, indicted, or censured. That would be interesting. And Donald Trump has a really bad day on the 19th or 20th. And that's fascinating. I told you he wasn't going to get any good news last week. I don't think he's going to get any good news this week. And I do believe like on the 21st is the deadline for Jack Smith to rebut the claim Donald Trump put forth to the Supreme Court. I'm putting my bets on Jack Smith on that one, not because I think the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing, but you have to remember if they rule that Trump's immune, they have to make it for every president then, and then that could be their opposition, right? So I don't know how that's going to go. I just know that Trump does not have good luck for the foreseeable future, so... yes. All right. From the February 21st to the 23rd, I think, again, we're going to see big storms, big winds. We could see weird tornadoes, lightning strikes that are out of this world. We could see Just some big stuff, especially more on the 22nd and 23rd when it comes to like lightning as that moon squares off with Uranus. We could see power outages, transformers blow, grid failures. This could be a solar storm or magnetic storm as well. That doesn't tend to impact everybody. It tends to be things really impact people at northern or very southern latitudes. Issues in tech sector, head of a company ousted or investigated, data breach or payment gateway disruptions. So always keep some cash on you, folks. We could see, and it doesn't have to be a ton of cash, it could be $20, but just keep a little extra on you this week. Big bank under threat or investigation. They could be overextended. I think we're going to see private equity firms in trouble this week as well, starting today, Monday. Hacking, ransomware, data breaches, mining accident, or issues with minerals. And it could just be headlines about minerals. Big transportation issues or accident involving trucking and or rail. Supply chain breaks in multiple industries. We may not see that in the headlines until later, but I think we're going to see issues with parts and machines. Explosions or bombings. These could be pretty big as we're in that waxing gibbous phase. This could be, variety of places. So keep your eye on the headlines. We could see issues with the stock market and cryptocurrency. It could be volatile. So, it depends. There could be some news that kind of rocks those sectors. So keep your eye out. Political figure or CEO would be ousted from a position for breaking the law or ethics violations. Big temperature changes. These could cause power outages or communications issues. This could be a big swing. We could go from cold to hot, hot to cold. Very, very volatile weather between, especially like the 22nd and 23rd. We could see internet disruptions, typhoons, cyclones, wind, fires of all kind, including arson, big tornadoes. I almost said tomatoes. Tornadoes possible. U.S. expands war in Middle East or attempts to. And I think we could see that as early as the 21st. They're definitely trying to, expand that, and it's not worked. I've expected if there was going to be an expansion, there's been a couple key dates and it's passed those dates, and I've been like, wow, I really expected that to kind of get out of control. So as horrific as it is, I just want you guys to know this could be a lot worse. And I know that's cold comfort, but there's going to be a concerted effort to expand this conflict. And yes, I'm using the word conflict. I'm using conflict. I could say aggression. But again, I've told you, I'm going to keep things on Patreon for the biggest opinions. We'll see at least one historic event between the 21st and the 22nd. Okay, this could be, and we could see some seismic activity up on deck as well. We're just in a more active seismic period. And then the moon is in Virgo, February 23rd through the 26th. We have that full moon, early hours of the 24th on the west coast of the United States. So that's 4:30 a.m. Pacific that we'll see that. I think we'll see big erosion events, landslides, rock slides, mudslides, erosion to coasts. And this is global. We could see some definite seismic activity with this, especially during that full moon. I was looking at that chart the other day. I think it's in the southern hemisphere. Again, I'm going to give warnings for New Zealand on that. Micronesia, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, that region, Philippines. in that area. It's very, very active right now. I think it's going to continue to be active, but it could also be in South America as well. And so keep your eye out for that. It could be also in the Indian Ocean, like around Madagascar. So Southern Hemisphere, keep your eye open. California could also see some rumblers. I don't think they're going to be very big, but as far as like it's not going to be over 6.0, I think we might see something between 4.5 and 5.5, but it'll be significant. Like it'll be somewhere like populated. So they're not going to do a lot of damage because of how our infrastructure is built, but it'll be noticeable. So, be aware. Don't be afraid though, I don't think it's going to be like super big if it is in California, and it could be in the LA area or greater Los Angeles area. But of course, Northern California is very active as well. It's very, very hard to predict these things, guys. So, we could see big policy debates over fiscal matters. Public health could be up on deck. I think we're going to see a lot of issues around healthcare. Farmers and livestock are in the news. Failed harvest, planting season delayed. We don't know, like we've lost this collective knowledge because we moved from being an agrarian society, a farming society, to an urban society after World War II. It used to be everybody was pretty informed on growing things. And, our harvests have been impacted year over year now for the last 6 years due to climate change. And so that's one of the reasons we have inflation in food. It's not just people are price gouging. The yields are getting lower. So that means there's less, being produced because of natural events. Okay. So weather. If you have a flood in an orchard, you're not going to get a great harvest. So pay attention to your dietary needs, what you need, and watch those harvests. You can Google that stuff. We'll see, planting could be disturbed because of weather. Potential legal actions towards public figures and bureaucrats. We could see like a class action. Now, there is an interesting case coming up this week at the International Court of Justice. Palestine is kind of forcing the court to examine the concept of apartheid in Israel. That will be interesting. It's a 6-day hearing. Remember, these things are processes. This does not move quickly. I know everybody wishes it would, and yet it doesn't move quickly. These things will never have moved quickly. And so there's process after process is happening. So it's being made part of the collective record. We could see missiles and rocket launches. This could be for satellites. We could see missiles go astray. We could see accidents, oil leaks, gas, chemicals, etc. We could see that in the news. It could be old accidents that get finally in the headlines, or it could be new ones. We could see telecommunication issues, cell towers, satellites, internet cables sabotaged or broken by weather or storms. Has seismic activity increased? Turkey, Azerbaijan, Syria, Greece, general Mediterranean, Central Asia, East Asia, New Zealand, potential 6.0, public or above. Okay, so it's sizable earthquakes. A public figure in a scandal accused of inappropriate behavior, massive flooding event, big tides, chemical weapons, or chemical spills could be in the news. This is stuff I think could be in the headlines. Again, it's not going to impact absolutely every person directly. This is just stuff to be aware of what's up on deck. Last week was something else. And that was a whole lot of that list. Came up. I don't get a great amount of pleasure out of being right about things, but I don't. I'm proving my accuracy. I would much rather prove accuracy about your life and growing your life. So that full moon is It's going to be persnickety. I think we're going to see healthcare really struggling. Uh, I think they've all but given up on doing right by the people. I don't see more lockdowns. I know there were people and psychics on TikTok talking about lockdowns. I don't see any lockdowns happening. I just don't see that. I think we could have, we do have a full on pandemic. The pandemic hasn't gone away. I do urge people to wear masks and be mindful in public. COVID has not gone away. We know a lot more about long COVID now. Um, and it's just not something, I want to live with. And that was one of my concerns way back in 2021 was the dismissal of the ramifications of the long-term effects. Because when I look at the astrology, I'm like, wow, there's long-term effects of failed public health. So do keep your precautions up. It doesn't matter if people look at you weird. Would you rather have long-term health implications because you didn't want to get looked at weird? Really? Really? Be careful. Take care of yourself. We need you. All right. So I'm going to take a quick look at Julian Assange's chart. I'll just give you a heads up and then I'll do it as part of the patron only podcast. But let me just give you a heads up because he is up on deck with this, hang on, with this hearing happening where he's doing his appeal, trying to not be extradited. It's very interesting because that full moon does happen in his 10th house. So he has a Sagittarius rising. He's got Saturn actually it's been squaring off with his rising. He's got an Aquarius Mars. I can't pause my recording. I want to see. I don't know what time his trial is. Or hearing, I should say, not trial, but time is his hearing. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. I don't know if I'm going to get the time, and I need the time. Let's see. Find out. Let's see. I'm on the Guardian here, taking a look. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, it's so much editorializing. I miss being able to just look up a date. Let's see here. I know it's the 21st I believe that's his hearing date. So, but let's double check that. I'm trying to find. Oh my God. Everybody's talking about the hearing, but they're not saying like when the hearing is. So annoying. I believe let's assume it's in the morning though. Okay, so I'm looking at his chart. And he's got a 2 degrees Sagittarius rising. It's been under stress and strain from Pluto. He's got Mars conjunct his IC. His Mars is at 21 degrees. So the Mars-Venus conjunction is going to be around 5 degrees on the 21st. Up 5 degrees of Aquarius. In his 3rd house. Or is this Mercury? Okay. Interesting. He's got his mental health really is under strain, like they've been saying, with Uranus moving through that 6th house and squaring off with his Mars. He's been going through it. He might be able to stay the extradition. I don't know. I'll look at this a little more and talk about it in Patreon. He's certainly going to have some things illuminated. They may accept his team's argument this time. They didn't accept his argument last time. Um, enough time has passed and enough tactics have kind of changed out in the world. They might decide they have bigger fish to fry right now. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I'll have to take a look at it in more depth. But I think it's likely he may have some kind of at least answer, you know. I don't think he's going to get extradited. At least not right now. And when I look at that, I'm just not seeing that. Well, he has an interesting chart. I'll talk about it more in Patreon. So there's that happening this week. And then the trial at the International Court of Justice, that I was fascinated because they refused to hear something else by South Africa. The hearing, it's not a trial. I keep saying trial. It's this week. Does it start today? So this is a very interesting one. And now I'm looking at Al Jazeera for this just because it's the first link that came up. So the International Court of Justice is going to hear about the occupation of Palestine, and especially since 1967. Okay, so this is not my opinion. This is just what I'm reading. The International Court of Justice in The Hague will hear from 52 countries and 3 organizations on the legal consequences of Israel's occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. So that starts today, the 19th of February, and it'll go for 6 days. That's historic. You know, they've been unwilling to hear these things in the past, even though the United Nations made UN Resolution 242 way back in the day. So it won't cause an immediate resolution. I'm going to tell you that much, whatever they find, but that is historic. We're going to see a lot of historic discussions in a lot of realms in regions. And you have to remember the United States and the United Kingdom, who started it, have been doing balance of power politics for a really long time. And almost all of the destabilization in the world is a result of that. They'll blame, and then before them, there were other empires. We kind of talked about that at the end of class and intermediate. Understanding these things is important because that way people can't point to a recent past state and go, it's because of that. No, actually, it's because of a lot of things that go way back and we haven't had resolutions. So we get little band-aid measures or little agreements and they don't solve the actual problems. And I'm going to argue that Pluto in Aquarius over the next 20 years is going to have us facing that. So that's what's up on deck. So this week is a little volatile. I'm going to go through what you can expect for the full moon in Patreon. Give my patrons some love. But in general, just take deep breaths. Everybody's going to be sensitive. Be kind to one another. Be gentle with one another. And don't take any wooden nickels. That's a phrase you don't hear anymore, right? So have a good week. Remember, just because things are going weird in the world doesn't mean you can't have a personally great day. I'm Laurie Rivers. I'm your favorite astrologer. I'll talk to you later.